Welcome to Anatomy of an Interview. I'm James Brown. We're going to go step by step through what happened here in this Bill Belichick CBS News frap.
After winning more Super Bowls than any coach in NFL history, Bill Belichick is both documenting his stellar football career and launching its newest chapter. He's talking with Tony DeCopel.
Coach.
All right, so just to start there, it's pretty standard setup. Nothing too crazy. You know, I don't see this as just off the rip as a moment where the folks at CBS News are trying to set up Bill Belichick. That first shot there is kind of hilarious. You have Bill in the Navy shirt with a kind of an awkward grin, but when Bill smiles, it's usually pretty awkward.
So thank you for doing this.
You're probably thinking the same thing I was when I sat down with Bill Belichick.
What's going on with this sweatshirt?
It is kind of that's a punchy question. What's going on with this sweatshirt? It's not, I wouldn't say it's an angry question or a mean question. It's a rational question to ask. You have a guy who is worth, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars in a ratty sweatshirt in front of you. I mean, that's a bit odd when you're in a national interview.
Well, you can see I've worn this one for a while.
Do you remember how you got the cut here?
No.
Tattered, and yes,
Let's go back a little bit.
For a while.
Do you remember how you got the cut here?
No.
Oh, the internet it's crawling.
tattered, and yes, often sleeveless.
We're crawling. We're crawling.
Belichick's signature look is part of his singular focus, as he writes in a new book.
I'm going to slow down. I'm going to go back a bit here.
He's talking with Tony DeCopel.
Coach, thank you for doing this.
You're probably thinking the same thing I was when I sat down with Bill Belichick.
What's going on with this sweatshirt?
I don't think there's anything wrong with asking that kind of question pretty quickly. It's not offensive. It's not. It shouldn't even put you on a defensive. You chose to wear that shirt. You chose to put yourself on national television in that kind of garb. So when you choose to wear a certain type of clothing in an interview, you must remember as you walk into an interview, everything is fair game. You, especially everything you're wearing. So if you are wearing something with a giant hole in it, it's going to come up.
You can see I've worn this one for a while.
Do you remember how you got
Come on, we're dragging here.
the cut here?
No.
Tattered, and yes,
All right, I'm going to switch internet networks. Be just a moment. Okay. Oh no.
often sleeveless. Belichick's signature look is part of his singular focus. As he writes in a new book, he's motivated not by style or fame,
New England win,
but by the obvious.
We're crawling here. I don't know what's going on with my internet
the
here.
Patriots in the greatest comeback in Super Full history.
So why, before the career is over,
So why, before the career's over,
would you write a book called The Art of Winning? You're still out there practicing the art.
Well, I never had really had a good chance to do that before. So I tried to capture some of the ups and downs. And
let's back up a bit.
chance to do that before. So I tried to capture some of
Not sure what's going on with my internet here. We are crawling.
The Art of Winning. You're still out there practicing the art.
Well, I never had really had a good chance to do that before. So I tried to capture some of the ups and downs. And
Oh no. All right. All right. This sucks. So I am going to look at Bill Belichick's claims here. So let's go to the New York Post article while I download this interview, because obviously the internet is dragging here. Thank you to the 19 people who are joining me now. Okay. All right. Let's head to our friends at the New York Post. Here we go. Okay. Bill Belichick claims CBS stepped out of bounds and the legendary coach is going to bat for his 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. The New York Post, the North Carolina head coach, released a statement Wednesday bashing CBS Sunday Morning for its selective editing from his controversial interview that featured Hudson interrupting the segment to say her 73-year-old boyfriend would not answer the question about how the two met. Belichick said he clearly communicated to his publicist, Simon and Schuster. By the way, Simon & Schuster is not a publicist. That's a publisher. I'm not sure if that's an error on on the New York Post side or on the Bill Belichick side. But okay, maybe his publicist who works at Simon & Schuster, that any promotional interviews would be solely on his upcoming book, The Art of Winning, released next week. The CBS interview eventually touched on his relationship with Hudson. Unfortunately, the expectation was not honored during the interview, Belichick said in a statement. I was surprised when unrelated topics were introduced, and I repeatedly expressed to the reporter, Tony DiColpo, and the producers that I preferred to keep the conversation centered on the book. After after the occurred. I mean, I'm not losing it there. I would hope that you would see this as well. Let's blow that up. You see, after that occurred several times, Jordan, with whom I share personal and professional relationship, stepped in to reiterate the point to help refocus the discussion. She was not deflecting any specific question or topic, but simply doing her job to ensure the interview stayed on track. I guess, just as a guy who's worked in journalism, a guy who's worked in communications extensively in both worlds, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband should not be your publicist. Period. End of story. You need someone who's going to come at the scenario with an impartial point of view. Someone who's not going to come at it from an emotional perspective. Someone that's going to tell you that if you're going to go on CBS News is going to ask you what you're posting about on social media, if you're posting about something that's interesting. And Bill Belichick, a guy who is, clammed up like a turtle, going on, gallivanting around with a 24-year-old at 73 that's interesting. So you can't tell me if you can't not expect CBS News to bring up that kind of thing. Look, I think that there are I think that there are plenty of issues when it comes to networks like CBS. I don't think they're perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this one doesn't feel like this is one where they are wrong. And now that I've downloaded this video, we're gonna go step by step. I want to tear this one apart because I think it's very instructive. So why you should not have your wife or your spouse or your girlfriend as your publicist. So let's continue through this article here first. The final 8-minute segment does not reflect the productive 35-minute conversation that we had, which covered a wide range of topics related to my career. Instead, it represents edited clips and stills from just a few minutes of the interview to suggest a false narrative that Jordan was attempting to control the conversation, which is simply not true. CBS, in its own statement, gave it a separate story. When we agreed to speak with Mr. Belichick, it was for a wide-ranging interview, a CBS spokesperson said in a statement on X. There were no preconditions or limitations to this conversation. This was confirmed repeatedly with his publisher before the interview took place and after it was completed. Belichick's statement comes 3 days after the airing of the CBS interview, which some have found cringeworthy due to her involvement. Hudson, a former college cheerleader, was described as a constant presence on the CBS Sunday morning set, where Belichick spoke with the couple about his prolific NFL coaching career. So that's what they say. What do you say after we review this? There we go. Gonna take gonna boot this up. Okay. There we go. All right. Here we go. Okay, standard setup. Nothing that screams, like tabloidy or exploitative. There, just Jane Pauley doing Jane Pauley things, and I love this still though. You have Bill Belichick in this sort of weird grin he's got going on there, and also I think he needs his hair. He's a hairdresser, but that's that. As you would expect, the giant hole there will come up. Okay. I belabor this for those of you who've been with me this whole piece, but I'll bring it up again. When you're doing an interview, everything in the room is fair game. Everything you're wearing is fair game. I can, as a reporter interviewing you, I can ask you anything. You may not like it, but I can. You have to be aware with it of that, and you have to be able to handle the moment. We're approaching a minute in, and we're still in glowing territory here. I mean, this is I think Bill should be kind of wary about this. That's not a crazy question. It's literally the title of his book. The one thing about that question that's kind of interesting is that Bill is he is still working, but he's not working in the NFL. I can see that being a bit of a sore subject for him. But let's go. Okay, so one thing that was obvious to me there, and I'll go back 10 seconds or so. Well, that's a clear edit. It might be a big one, might be a small one, not quite sure. But edits happen. That at least to me that does speak to what he was saying. Not to the importance of it, but what it does say that this is clearly an edited interview. So also in an interview, especially in an interview that's kind of static like this is. So you have Tony DeCopo sitting in one chair, you have Bill Belichick sitting in another, and you're in an environment that's pretty static. It's a two-person harmony going on here. You want to show some movement. You don't want to bore your audience. So I can see where you'll do a quick cut, cut in order to, show some, to make it less static. Look, I just first blush within 90 seconds, this is not a confrontational interview on any level. This actually shuts up pretty well. It screams nice, and which you typically get from CBS Sunday Morning. Okay, straightforward. nothing all that interesting or controversial. You get a little bit of a window into him, but nothing that is too unique. The fact that they're zooming in on a yearbook kind of screams that they're scraping for material here. They are struggling to sort of frame this and add some sort of B-roll of some sort. It does say, I would not fear nor wish my fate, but boldly say each night, tomorrow let my sun his beams display, or the clouds hide them. I have lived today, by Cowley. Interesting. Now that's a bit of a salty point there. I can see how Bill could just looking at this from Bill's perspective, what how you could hear a line like that and like not be happy with it. Let's go through it one more time. That's punchy. I mean, relatively so. Relatively punchy there. Not terribly. Like you could certainly be meaner, but I think it screams to me just thinking about this from DeCopo's point of view. He's like, I read this book and this isn't going deep into the world of Bill Belichick. It's sort of just skimming. There's a lot of edits there. Let's go back for a moment. Two, four, five, six, seven. He kind of just babbled there. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just not a great sound bite. I think it feels a bit spackled together there in that circumstance. A- as coming at it from the perspective of Belichick or a person who's being interviewed, I wouldn't complain about that. They were trying to make him sound better than he was. Isn't that what you would want as a person who's being interviewed? To have the people who are interviewing you sound make you sound better than you are. Um, I think that's definitely what was displayed there. we're halfway through this, and no rational person would be upset by how they're being depicted in this piece. No rational person at all. Not sure that's true, but that Brady seems at ease in the spotlight. But I'll let it go. He immediately looks uncomfortable there. Let's go back. This is the first time, and now we're almost 6 minutes in, and this is the only moment where he so far where where it seems like he's being knocked off his spot. And it's interesting how he's sort of that like he looks down. Interesting. He's kept his posture straight the whole time, but and that's the first time where like he's inverting his gaze, and he's looking away. Hard to believe that that Robert Kraft, a guy who was your boss for a quarter century, wouldn't be a part of your life lesson in football. But that's besides the point. That's a classic Belichickian, sort of like prick response. And I think they've let that feels unedited. I mean, in that, um, I think they purposely let that part ride. No edit, continuous. Okay, all right. I think one of the things that people need to look at when they're going to have a major interview, an interview where people are going to watch and listen to them and hear and have a reporter and a team of journalists sort of pour over their background and understand the circumstances that they're going into, that you can't bend reality. Robert Kraft has been, out front with what he decided to do with the Patriots. He decided to move on and move to Gerard Mayo. Didn't work out, but yeah, that was his choice. And it's not like it's hidden. It's not like you can bend reality on this one. It was truly strange. And I think this is where having a novice as your publicist is it really hurts you, because you're not having anyone approach you and ask and say, hey, they're going to ask you about your departure from the Patriots. They may still ask you, even no matter what kind of discussions happened before. Once you're in front of a microphone, once you're in front of a camera, once you're in front of a journalist, they may just ask you anything. There's no rule, especially when it's public information, when it's well documented. I find it thoroughly amusing. I found even that alone kind of awkward. Let's go back a bit. Tony didn't that didn't that sounded a bit awkward. Let's go back a moment. Okay. Um uh then why do the interview? That's what I struggle with. If you're not willing to discuss your relationship, if you're going to appear at the interview with him, why do the interview? If you're going to be public about it, as they clearly are going into here, why do the interview at all? If you're going to mention her in the book, and as he told the New York Post that he wanted to discuss the book and he wanted to discuss his career, why mention her in a book if you don't want to discuss her? Or did she decide that they weren't going to discuss this? Hard to say, but that is as a person who's worked on both sides of the interview spectrum, both with people doing interviews and have done plenty of interviews professionally myself. It's one of those circumstances that, as an interviewer, if I'm interrupted like that, no matter how mild-mannered I am, I'm a little pissed. And frankly, he got off easy, at least so far here. Okay. Once again, if you don't want to talk about it in interviews, I understand. Don't be public about it. Anything you talk about publicly, you should expect to come up in an interview. You should be prepared to respond to it. It's irking as a journalist, as a comms professional, and as just a viewer. It makes me think more and more that he's not doing any of these posts, that this whole online persona that he is cultivating is not his, that his even this interview, I don't think necessarily feels like his idea. Obviously he's very in love with Jordan here, if he's he's going to do a shot like this with her, but I also find it strange that he didn't see that question coming. I want to hear that question in context again. That's a really softball question. It's also a very question that's well, that you could easily see coming. That, hey, you're this person who isn't a social media savvy person. You don't post all the time. All of a sudden, you're posting all the time, and it's you doing quote unquote adorable photos with your girlfriend, and something. While I don't think it was the clearest question, it is a question that is, I think, it can't be surprising. Let's go back about 10, 15 seconds to see this one more time. Yeah, I don't think I believe him. I But I find it strange that you're on the platform at all. Obviously, she's making these posts for him, and I'm not sure. It's really interesting to have a guy who's such a control freak on the football field in the football world to see this entirely to her. It's really interesting. Okay, so I want to go back to the New York Post piece on this and the accusations that he laid out. and then just to get to do a comparison to what we just saw versus what he claimed. Now let's add here. Okay, we'll head back up here. Alrighty. So selective editing. It seems like a really weak claim after watching the interview. I can't even. I can't. It would take a very twisted mind to land on selective editing as a problem with this interview. I think honestly, I'm a little surprised. Maybe DeCopo is just a nicer guy than I am, but when you are when you are being insulted, and I honestly look at it that way as being insulted, when you're being hamstrung by a relative or in this case a girlfriend of your subject, I would not have been as nice in that edit as DeCopo and his team was. They were polite. Did he push on the edges a little? But selective editing, I mean, I think that's an extreme claim. Belichick said he clearly communicate to his publicist. Once again, I don't know if this is after watching this interview now for the second time, I'm thinking that Belichick doesn't know who his publicist is. That may sound crazy, but I increasingly am thinking this because if this, just looking at the thing, we're going to click through here. And we'll look directly at the full Belichick statement, because I I just find this sort of strange here. Let's hold on. Here I go. Okay, we'll go through this Belichick statement. I agreed to speak with CBS Sunday Morning to promote my new book, The Art of Winning: Lessons from My Life in Football. Prior to the interview, I clearly communicated with my publicist at Simon & Schuster that any promotional interviews I participated in would agree to focus solely on the contents of the book. If your girlfriend's in the book, therefore, I mean, CBS did nothing wrong. And she's in the book. Literally in the interview, they point to the page where she's in the acknowledgments. She's in the book. Unfortunately, that expectation was not honored during the interview. I was surprised when unrelated topics were introduced, and I repeatedly expressed to the reporter, Tony DeCopo, and the producers that I preferred to keep the conversation centered on the book. After this occurred several times, Jordan, with whom I share a personal and professional relationship, stepped in to reiterate that point to help refocus the discussion. He was not deflecting any specific question or topic. It certainly sounded that way. You literally said you wouldn't. She literally said that you would not talk about how they met. It was a question that the reporter asked. That's a specific question that's being deflected by simply doing her job. Once again, for those of you who are just joining me now, I strongly advise you, do not hire relatives or friends as your PR agent. Some of the clips did not appear as though we were. Some of the clips made it appear as though we were avoiding the question of how we met, but we have been open about the fact that Jordan and I met on a flight to Palm Beach in 2021. The final 8-minute segment does not reflect the productive 35-minute conversation that we had, which covered a wide range of topics related to my career. Okay. This is a strange point. Okay. I don't know, I've made hundreds, if not thousands of news stories. I've written. It is a rare moment when you make a broadcast news story where you include the whole conversation. If I'm making a feature where I'm sitting down with an interview with you, we may sit down, we may talk for 5 hours. I'm not going to include 5 hours in the interview. This is not the Joe Rogan Experience. It's CBS Sunday Morning. They give you 8 minutes and they have to tell a story here. And they want to tell a story that is artful and all encompassing, but not encompassing the entire length of your production, your conversation. That's a strange argument to make. They didn't. I would doubt that CBS Sunday Morning producers told Simon & Schuster or your girlfriend or you that they were going to air the entire 35-minute conversation. Look, I have no doubt that a 35-minute conversation with Bill Belichick could be interesting, but this is not a podcast. That'd be great on a podcast. That'd be great on a Barbara Walters special back in the day. That'd be great. But that's not what CBS Sunday Morning did. Even worse, this also speaks to Belichick and his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, not being prepared, which is the funny thing about this. This is the most prepared coach in the history of football. And the fact that they didn't, sit down and watch an episode of CBS Sunday Morning to see what the format was is laughable. Or they're just pulling, they're just I don't know, struggling to come up with some sort of excuse for to fatten this response. I find it strange. Instead, he says, it presents selectively edited clips and stills from just a few minutes of the interview. There weren't any stills of the interview itself. There were, we just watched it. We can go back 5-10 minutes. There weren't stills of the interview. There were stills from his life and career. And from social media as well. Instead, it presents the selectively edited clips and stills from just a few minutes of the interview to suggest a false narrative. What false narrative? This is a very, very strange reaction to this concept. That Jordan was attempting to control the conversation, which is simply not true. Well, I mean, from what we saw, it certainly looked that way. There were a couple of stills in the middle where Jordan appeared in front of Bill, but I wouldn't say that was necessarily that editing was I think whoever wrote this, whether this was Bill himself or Jordan Hudson or others, I think this is a stretch. Just broadly speaking on the interview itself, I believe that there are 3 elements of every interview, every interaction with media. There's you, there's them, and there's the big picture. And I think there's a couple things. There's certainly a lack of self-awareness, that it's remarkable that Bill Belichick, the curmudgeon, the legendary curmudgeon, is gallivanting around the world with a 24-year-old. That this is not a remarkable thing, that he hadn't he didn't think that this was worth discussing, is strange. This is why you need an outside voice going into an interview like this. You need someone who's going to tell you, like, hey, like, you may not think this is strange, but they definitely will. Also, I think he needed an analysis of his blind spots. Someone to walk through and say, hey, these, I read your book, and these are things that you may not think are consequential, but look, a journalist will read this and find them consequential. And if you're going to submit to interviews, these are X and Y and ABC are all these things that they are going to want to know more about, because it will matter to them, even if it doesn't matter to you. He needs someone to sit down and walk him through all that, and he didn't have that. Now, the CBS side of things, I thought they pulled their punches. I mean, come on. This guy, if she indeed, as the CBS report claimed, and I'll go to the CBS statement. Let me go there. Pull that up. Okay. Riveting television. That CBS that she was a constant presence in the interview. If someone were interrupting my interview repeatedly with somebody, I'd be very upset. I would punch harder. I would have let some of those awkward moments that we watched together ride a little bit longer, a little bit harder. And I wouldn't just move on from it. And then there's a bigger picture in it all. I think this is more on the Belichick side than the CBS side. Yes, it's awkward to be 73 and dating a 24-year-old, especially when you're uber famous. It's awkward if Al Pacino, who did it, and Rupert Murdoch and Robert De Niro, who I believe are all dating people who are very, very much younger than them, when they're interviewed, they're going to be asked about it, just because these things are atypical culturally. Secondly, Bill Belichick is a legend in a sport that is heavily watched and consumed by men. And I think a lot of us look at this and are like, what the hell happened to Bill Belichick? Like, this is Mr. Large and in charge. And all of a sudden he's shrunken. What happened to Bill? I think that's what a lot of people who know Belichick from his sports, his long, half century long jaunt in the football world, are wondering, what happened to him? What's wrong with him? We want more. We expect more from him. This has been Anatomy of an Interview. Thank you for the dozens of you who've watched me live as we broke down Bill Belichick and CBS News. And with that, I'd good you good night.